Camping in Iceland is a really flexible way to experience the country. You don't have to book ahead of time, and there are tons of campgrounds for you to choose from. Here are a few helpful things you should know before camping in Iceland. First and foremost, it's no longer legal to camp wherever you want to in Iceland. Iceland is a beautiful country wherever you go, and so I certainly understand the draw of just wanting to throw up your tent or park your camper wherever. However, there are laws in place that require that you go to official campgrounds to camp. Otherwise, you can be hit with a fine. There are currently over 170 different campgrounds throughout the country, and so just take your time and I'm sure you'll be able to find one that meets your standards. The next thing you should know before camping in Iceland is that you want to be prepared for the weather. Iceland is notorious for being really windy and really rainy, both of which can have a negative impact on the experience of staying in an old-fashioned tent. While I did see a number of people camping in tents, I was very grateful to be in a camper van as opposed to a tent. You just don't have to deal with the sound of the wind flapping your tent all night, and you also don't have to worry about water seeking through the seams of your tent if it's really, really rainy. Something else that's good to know is that most campgrounds in Iceland shut down between November and May. Some of them start shutting as early as September. As you're making your plans, make sure you check the dates on your campgrounds to see if they'll even be available while you're traveling. They're usually closed during this time period just because the weather can be unpredictable and can be unsafe for traveling on the roads even. If you are planning to travel in the colder time of year, I would say just give yourself more time in case you have to wait out some bad weather. Another thing you might not know about camping in Iceland is that you don't always pay first thing when you get to the campsite. So the very first campsite we stayed at, we arrived in the evening. I walked all around that property looking for somewhere to pay, but there was nobody there. So we ended up just picking a spot for the night and settling in. Eventually, later that evening, somebody came around to all of the campers with a card reader and just accepted payment then. So don't panic if you don't see someone to accept payment. They'll usually accept payments in the evening after most people have arrived for the day or early in the mornings before people leave. In regards to how much campgrounds cost in Iceland, you pay per person rather than per vehicle or per tent. And the average cost we found was between 10 and 20 US dollars per person. Something else that's useful to know, especially if you're gonna stay in a tent, is that many of the campgrounds we stayed at had full kitchen facilities where you could go in and cook pretty much anytime you wanted. We quickly found that doing dishes was a pain in the tiny little sink in our camper, so it's nice just having kitchens you can go into to maybe wash up or cook any bigger meals that you have planned. At meal times, the kitchens become quite busy with a ton of people running around, so if you don't want to wait in line to use anything, you'll want to get there either earlier or plan on eating a little bit later. Another reason the kitchens are nice is because you're actually not allowed to start fires in Iceland, and even if you could, there's not a ton of wood to go around in most of the country. So your only other option is to use a little gas stove that you can rent from your camper van company or just from another company in the area if you're just staying in a tent. One happy surprise we found when camping in Iceland is that you can actually get a lot of free stuff at the campgrounds. A number of campgrounds, particularly closer to Reykjavik, had community sharing shelves where people would leave their extra supplies as their trip came to an end. Some of the most common items you might find here were like toilet paper, paper towels, extra gas that wasn't used for cooking, and miscellaneous food items. So if you're trying to travel Iceland on a budget, it might be a good idea to stay somewhere close to Reykjavik just so you can take advantage of all the free stuff you're able to pick up from the sharing shelves. The next thing to know is that every campground isn't guaranteed to have showering facilities. If you plan on taking a shower at the beginning or the end of each day, you'll definitely want to read the fine print of whatever campground you're looking at just to make sure they actually have a shower. A number of the showers we came across required coins, so you'll want to get a little bit of cash at some point just to break into coins so you can use those if you need to. Reviews are your friend when you're picking campgrounds in Iceland. There are over 170 campgrounds in Iceland, and so there's a wide variation in the type of facilities that you're gonna come across. If there's something that's particularly important for you, it's a good idea just to read and make sure that they include it. Things such as like clothes washing facilities, kitchens, Wi-Fi, that type of stuff. With the online reviews, I would just take everything with a grain of salt, especially the 1-star reviews. Some of my favorite campgrounds in Iceland were ones that maybe didn't have the best reviews online, but the views around them were spectacular and like it was exactly what I was looking for. One common concern people have about traveling Iceland is, how they're gonna be able to keep their devices charged. If you're traveling in a camper van, you can charge your devices while you're driving. You can also rent or buy a power inverter for your car so that you can charge larger devices while you're driving. This is the method that I used and it worked great for keeping my camera and phone and all of that stuff charged. The other option for keeping devices charged is to use the plugs that are usually in the kitchen facilities or in the bathrooms. Most of the places we stayed at had some outlets in these places. In addition, if you're coming from the US, you'll need to have a European plug adapter so you can keep your devices charged. A few items that I found useful for camping in Iceland were a headlamp. This was good for just going to the bathroom at night. It was also nice having a backup light source in case our van died. Something else you want to have would be slip-on shoes. These are good for going to the bathroom and showering. I don't know if I saw any campgrounds where you could actually rent towels, so you'll definitely want to bring a towel or two. Paper towels and trash bags are really nice. We found ourselves using those quite a bit just for cleanup in the camper. A good sleeping bag, of course. If you don't want to bring this with you from a different country, you can usually rent them either from your camper van company or just another company in the area. If you plan on cooking your own meals, a campsite stove is a must. And lastly, a portable charging bank is nice to have, especially if you're in a tent at night. You can use that just to keep your devices charged. I just made a video on things that I wish I knew before I traveled Iceland. You can check it out in the description. If this was helpful for you, please give me a thumbs up and I'll see you guys in the next video.